morning, everybody. This is BABYLONIAN Nishmat, Ishti Alice Faiza Bat Yosef Naim Salima. Now, I want to talk about a special subject today. The situation today triggered off the idea that I should talk about it. And part of it, I think I mentioned in last year's talks, but only part. I remember in South Africa, when I was in business, as usual, you look up foreclosures before you give somebody credit. And when I was looking somebody up, I noticed right next to his name was the name of our Chazan. The Chazan was a very good man, and I see that he's got a foreclosure. So I called him up and I said, look, how much do you owe? And I organized within the community that we should pay his debt. And of course, he was absolutely delighted, but he was too ashamed to go and tell anyone about his debt. So, and then I had another friend who had a house, and unfortunately, he didn't have enough of the property, dropped in value, and the bank wanted more money, and there was a foreclosure. And he had no choice. He was also too ashamed to go to the community, and he had no choice and had to sell his house, even though the man was very, very generous with his time and with his help, because he didn't have money to give to other people. But he did not go, and of course that was a shame. He sold his house at a lower price. Now, a similar thing happened to me, but I learned a very, very big lesson. I was in Israel. I regularly went to the synagogue. Thank God, I had the money to do it, and I was a great supporter of everybody who needed help, absolutely anybody, everybody. And that's no mitzvah, because that 10% didn't belong to me anyway. And I sort of always had to be ahead of it because the demands were greater than the actual 10%. Anyway, one year, the part of my investment dropped and the bank wanted payments. I had to give the regular payments. It was a lot of money. Actually, it was 50,000 pounds, but in those days, that was a lot of money. And of course, if you force sell a property, you can't get the cash, and anyway, you can't always get it in time. And the worst thing is, even though you're comfortable, you lose your credibility and your credit rating, and that affects everything. But I didn't want to go and ask anybody. Also, they probably wouldn't believe me. So then I went to my Rav and I said to him, look, this is my problem. I don't know what to do. He says, of course you have to ask. I'm going to talk to people. So I was very worried about this, and I had anyway decided that week to start learning also Talmud Bavli in parallel to the Talmud Bavli it said, anybody who needs help, they have to distribute that mitzvah. And if they're ashamed to help and don't ask, then they're condemned to having to beg for money the rest of their lives. And it was quite something, because it also came just in time. Anyway, I let the Rav go ahead. And of course, a lot of people didn't want me to fall, and they gave me the money. But the Rav said, listen, if you can give it back to the end of the year, then these people will not have that tax burden when they donate to other people. So I said, okay, we'll try. Anyway, I guaranteed them my house anyway, if we can't pay. And so what happened was, of course, I prayed and I cried, and I did everything that Avarachamim, as I had explained, and it's praying, and of course, begging HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help me. I go back to England, and somebody who'd been working with me for 15 years, he turned around to me and says, you know, I've got some money. I'd like to buy shares in the company we're working on. I believe in it. So I said, well, how much do you want? And he told me how many percent. Not a lot. I said, what do you think it's worth? So he said, £250,000. So, of course, I knew where it came from, and I immediately paid back the 50, and of course, and I could carry on very nicely, didn't have to worry. But then, the reason why I'm saying it is because of COVID. I know personally a lot of people here, and in Australia, and in the United States, and in Israel, are not collecting rent, but a lot of money. And what's going to happen when we come out of COVID? They're going to be faced by the bank. Bank wants the money. Now, a lot of people have a lot of wealth, but not in cash. And then the bank, if a forced sale, they have to, in a forced sale, they'll have to then lose money, and that will spoil all their credit rating again, because it'll be there that there was a foreclosure. So a lot of people are going to have that, face that problem. I hope not. But it's happened so many times in past economic crises. And here, it came back to me the important thing that one has got to be very careful. And, but a lot of people are ashamed because they say, well, I might not get help. So there was a story, just to complete this, where a man was very, very generous, and he had a lot of money, and every year he would visit his Rebbe and give him a very nice donation. And of course he was always welcomed. When he wanted, he got a hug when he came in, a beautiful Shabbat. He sang with him, he sat next to the Rebbe, and always when he came, he could get a private audience immediately. And then he lost his money. It happens in business. So when he went back to the Rebbe, he wanted to see him. The Rebbe always welcomed him. He was there Shabbat, the Rebbe ignored him. And then when he wanted a private audience with him, they said, no, you wait in line like everyone else. And he was getting angry at this. What's going on? When I got money, then you pay attention to me. And so he was waiting in line. After a couple of hours, getting more and more angry, he just couldn't take it anymore. The air was too heavy for him. He went outside, and he waited for a few hours till the Rebbe came out. He saw the Rebbe ignored him completely, went to his carriage, and then he called him over and he gave him 14 pennies. And he was absolutely disgusted. He went away crying. He went away crying, and he went into the forest, and he was praying and crying, but really with all his heart. He needs help. I mean, what's he going to do? And so they're foreclosing on his house, and what's he going to do? So suddenly a little Gentile boy taps him on the shoulder and says, why are you crying? He says, well, I've got these problems. So the little boy says, I've got these packages. I don't know what's inside them, but they're a penny each. He says, I've only got 14 pennies. He says, I've got exactly 14 packages. So he took them, and he found a lot of gold dinars inside the packages. Of course, he was very happy. It was just enough money that he needed. And then as he was going on, he sees a landowner coming out with a couple of kids tied to his cart. And he said, what are you doing that? The kids were crying. He says, look, the owner of the local inn, the Jewish owner, he owes me a lot of money, and I'm taking the kids and selling them as slaves. They did that in those days. So he said, how much? And he found it was all the money he had, and he gave it immediately without any question. Now what does he do? He went straight to the Beit Knesset, and he sat there and he started to learn and cry and pray. A very wealthy-looking man walked into the synagogue and looked at him, and he noticed, he came over to me and says, look, I see you can't concentrate on your prayers, you're crying. Can I help you? He told him what his problem was. He told him the story. So the man says, you know what? I will buy your whole mitzvah. Here's the money. He says, I'm absolutely not selling that mitzvah. I don't want to know. Anyway, he bargained again and again over a couple of hours, and then it came down to 1%, and he refused to sell the 1%. So the wealthy man was just going towards the door, and suddenly turned around to him and said, look, I'm going to give you all the money because I put you through the test. And you succeeded on that test. And here's all the money. And of course he was very happy, and he went home, and he solved all of his problems. But what do we learn from this? Number one, there's one place to cry and pray to. Yes, we mustn't be ashamed to ask anybody to help us. The trouble is, in some area you think you're being ignored, and sometimes you are. So you don't want that shame that when you go and ask, they will turn you down. Who wants that shame? So what do? You only have to pray, but you shouldn't be ashamed, otherwise you're condemned to having difficulties the rest of your life. And so it was with him, that all of us, even if we didn't give money, we should always know that it's better to go ask for help than to put yourself in a position where chas v'chalila you might have collected for the rest of your life. I only pray one thing, and this is a blessing, that none of us have to go through that situation. It won't turn out like that, not only for all our community, but Kol Am Yisrael and the whole world. Amen. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.